The battlefield was silent now, but not peaceful. Smoke rose from broken machines, and the air was heavy with the smell of fire and death. Shattered weapons lay scattered on the ground, and the sky was red from burning ships above. She lay there, half buried under the ruins, her body weak, her breath shallow. Her people had left her behind, abandoned her to die. Only hours ago, she had been one of their proud fighters, dressed in shining armor, carrying their banner into war. But when the battle turned against them, when the enemy pushed forward, they had made a cruel choice. They had chosen to escape, to save themselves, and leave her as nothing but a broken shell. Her name was Surya, and once she had been respected, but now she was just another body on the field of war. Her vision blurred, and every breath felt like fire in her chest. She whispered to herself, not even knowing why. Why did they leave me? Why am I not worth saving? Hours passed, and the silence around her grew heavier. Her world was fading, her thoughts turning dark. Perhaps this was her end. Perhaps death was all that remained. But in that moment, when hope was gone, she heard something, footsteps, slow and heavy, pressing against the ash and broken stone. At first she thought it was her imagination, a trick of her dying mind. But then the sound grew closer, stronger, until she felt the ground tremble. Surya forced her eyes open, struggling to see, and then she saw him, a human soldier. His armor was scarred, his weapon gripped tight in his hand. His helmet covered his face. He looked like death itself walking across the field, a figure of iron and shadow. The humans had always been the enemy, brutal and merciless in war. And now one of them stood before her, staring down at her broken form. Her heart pounded, fear stronger than pain. She tried to lift her arm, tried to reach for the weapon at her side, but her body betrayed her. She was too weak, too broken, and she could only lie there as the soldier approached. The human raised his weapon, pointing it at her. For a moment, the battlefield seemed to freeze. One pull of his trigger, and her life would end. Perhaps that was what her people wanted. Perhaps that was why they left her. To let the humans finish what they had started. Surya closed her eyes, waiting for the shot. But it never came. Instead, she heard the weapon lower. She opened her eyes in shock and saw him kneel beside her. Through his helmet's visor, she caught the faint glow of his eyes, steady and unreadable. But there was no hatred in them, only something she could not understand. The soldier placed his weapon aside and reached for her. His armored hand brushed the debris away, lifting the broken metal that pinned her. She felt his strength as he pulled her free. For a moment, she could not believe what was happening. Why would an enemy help her? Why would he choose to save a life he was sworn to destroy? Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. Why do you not kill me? She whispered, her voice weak. The human said nothing, only slipped his arm beneath her and lifted her from the ground. His armor was cold, but his grip was steady. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, as if her life mattered. Surya wanted to fight, wanted to resist, but she had no strength left. Her mind spun with questions. Was this a trick? Was he taking her as a prisoner? Or did he truly mean to save her? No answer came, only the sound of his boots crunching against the rubble as he carried her away from the place of death. The smoke behind them rose higher. The ruins faded into shadow. And for the first time since the battle began, Surya felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope, but hope mixed with fear. For she was in the hands of a human soldier, her enemy, and she had no idea what fate awaited her now. The human soldier carried her across the ruined land, his steps heavy but steady. Each sound of his boots against the broken ground echoed like a drumbeat in her fading mind. Surya felt the weight of his armor against her body, the cold steel pressing into her wounds, but she could not resist. Her strength was gone, and all she had left was fear. Why was he doing this? Why did he not kill her when he had the chance? Every story she had ever heard about humans said they were ruthless, that they spared no one. Yet this one had lowered his weapon, had lifted her in his arms instead of ending her life. The soldier did not speak, his silence as heavy as the smoke-filled air. But his actions were louder than any words. He moved with purpose, avoiding the main roads, taking paths through broken walls and shattered towers. It was clear he was not heading back to his base, nor toward her people's lands. He was taking her somewhere else. Serias dojahasht spoonwedi. Was she his prisoner, a trophy of war? Would he interrogate her, use her as bait? Or was there another reason, something deeper, something she could not yet see? Her body burned with pain, each movement sending fire through her veins. She wanted to close her eyes and surrender to the darkness, but her will kept her awake. She had to know why. Human, she whispered, her voice cracked and weak. Why do you carry me? The soldier glanced down, but gave no reply. His visor reflected the dim light of ruined fires, hiding his face, his expression unreadable. His silence only deepened the mystery. For hours they moved through the battlefield's remains. Twice Surya thought they were discovered, once by scavenger drones, once by enemy patrols, but each time the human acted with sharp instinct. He ducked behind walls, pressed her close to his chest, and waited for danger to pass. Not once did he hesitate. Not once did he let her fall. Finally, they reached a collapsed bunker, half hidden under rubble. The soldier lowered her gently onto the ground, his movements careful, as if she were fragile glass. For the first time since he found her, she could look at him properly. His armor was scratched and burned, marked by many battles. The insignia of his unit was torn, stained with ash. He removed his helmet, and she saw his face. Human, yes, but not the monster she had been taught to fear. His eyes were tired, shadows under them deep. Yet there was something strong there, something unbroken. He reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a small medical kit. Without speaking, he began tending to her wounds. Surya flinched at first, expecting pain, expecting cruelty, but his hands were steady and careful. He cleaned the blood, sealed the cuts, and wrapped her broken arm with practiced skill. She stared at him in disbelief. You should not be doing this," she whispered. "You are my enemy." He looked at her then, his voice low and firm. "I am a soldier," he said, "but I am also human." The words confused her, but they carried weight. Something inside her shifted, a small crack forming in the wall of fear she had built around her heart. As the night settled over the ruined land, Surya watched him prepare a small fire. The warmth pushed back the cold, the light casting shadows across the walls. For the first time in days, she felt her body relax, even if only a little. Still, her doubts remained. What if he changed his mind? What if his kindness was only a mask? She kept her eyes on him, waiting, watching, searching for the truth. But the truth was already clear in his actions. He had risked his life to save her, he had given her medicine, and now he gave her warmth. Whatever his reasons, they were stronger than hate. Her mind whispered warnings, reminding her of the betrayal of her own people, reminding her that humans were not to be trusted. But her heart whispered something else, something she had not felt since before the war. Perhaps, just perhaps, this human was different. And so, as the fire crackled softly, Surya lay back against the cold stone, her body aching, but her spirit caught between fear and fragile hope. The human soldier sat nearby, his weapon at his side, his eyes scanning the shadows. He said nothing more, but in his silence she felt a strange safety. Her last thought before sleep pulled her under was simple but powerful. She had been abandoned by her own kind, but saved by her enemy. And she could not escape the question that haunted her heart. Why? When Surya woke, the first thing she felt was pain, the second was warmth. The fire still burned low, its glow pushing away the cold. For a moment, she forgot where she was until her eyes fell on the human soldier sitting nearby, his weapon across his knees. He had not slept, not even for a moment. He was watching the shadows, guarding her. Her mind fought with itself. This man was her enemy, yet he had carried her, healed her, kept her alive. Every story she knew said humans were merciless, but this one's actions told a different story. And still, she could not trust him fully. The soldier noticed her stirring. Without a word, he handed her a small container of water. Her lips were dry, her throat burned, and though pride told her to refuse, survival forced her to accept. She drank, the cool liquid sliding down like life itself. He gave her a small ration pack next, hard food that tasted like ash, but it filled her stomach. Once again, he gave without taking. The hours that followed tested them both. He lifted her onto his back and carried her once more, moving carefully through the ruins. The battlefield was no longer quiet. Drones searched the skies, scanning for survivors. Her own people's machines, ready to kill even their abandoned soldier if it meant hiding their betrayal. And his army's patrols were hunting deserters. If either side found them, it would mean death. Their path led them through a broken forest, its trees blackened by fire. The ground shook as wild beasts, released from destroyed cages, roamed freely. Surya clung to the soldier's back as he moved silently, his every step calculated. But even the strongest silence could not last. From the darkness came a sound. Low growls, sharp claws striking stone. A pack of alien beasts, their eyes glowing in the night, surrounded them. Surya's heart froze, her body too weak to fight. The soldier lowered her gently behind a fallen log, then stood tall, weapon raised. The beasts lunged, fast and vicious. He fired, bright flashes lighting the night, each shot echoing across the forest. One beast fell, then another, but more came, circling, snarling, their teeth dripping with hunger. Surya wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her body betrayed her. All she could do was watch. The soldier fought like a storm, every move controlled, every strike powerful. When his weapon ran low, he drew his blade, cutting down the creatures that came too close. Blood splashed the ground, the air filled with roars and fire. Finally, when the last beast fell silent, only the sound of his breathing remained. He returned to her, his armor marked with claw scratches, his chest rising and falling heavy. Surya stared at him in shock. He had fought for her, risked his life for her again. Her own people had left her die, but this human, her enemy, stood between her and death again and again. "You saved me," she whispered, the words trembling out before she could stop them. The soldier only gave a small nod, wiping blood from his blade. He did not say it, but his actions spoke clearly. To him, saving her was not a choice. It was a duty he had already accepted. That night they found shelter in an abandoned outpost, its walls cracked but still standing. Inside, Surya leaned against the cold stone, her body shaking from weakness. The soldier worked silently, fixing the fire again, repairing his weapon. His silence frustrated her, but also comforted her. She wanted to ask him why, wanted to demand the truth, but fear held her back. Instead, she watched. Every movement he made was precise, every decision meant for survival. Slowly, she began to see something different. He was not only a soldier, he was a protector, and though he spoke little, his silence was not empty. It was steady, it was strong, and in that silence she felt safer than she ever had with her own kind. As the wind howled outside, Surya closed her eyes, her mind torn between distrust and a fragile new feeling. Trust. For the first time since her betrayal, she thought survival was possible. But she also knew one thing with certainty. Their struggle was not over. Enemies hunted them from both sides, and their bond, whatever it was, would soon be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. The ruined outpost gave them shelter for one night, but dawn came with new danger. The soldier rose first, scanning the horizon through broken walls, his eyes sharp, his weapon loaded. Surya stirred weakly, her body still aching, yet her mind sharper than before. She could see it in his posture. He knew they were being hunted. It did not take long for proof. Above the sky, a patrol drone drifted past, its red light sweeping over the land like a predator's gaze. The soldier pushed Saria flat against the ground, covering her with his armored body as the light passed over. Her heart pounded so hard she thought the machine would hear it. But the drone moved on, vanishing behind the hills. When he stood, she finally asked the question that haunted her. "Who are you running from? Human, your enemies or your own?" He looked at her, his face calm but heavy with something unspoken. "Both," he said simply, before turning away. That single word struck her harder than any blow. Both. Her people and his own were hunting them. For her, it was betrayal, a secret her empire wished erased. For him, it was desertion, a soldier who refused to obey orders. Two enemies, yet both abandoned by the very sides they had once served. Their journey grew harder. They moved at night, resting by day, hiding from scanning drones and armed patrols. Twice they heard voices, shouts in the distance, soldiers searching the ruins. Saria recognized the words of her own people. "They want me dead," she whispered, her throat tight. The soldier gave her a short glance, but said nothing, though his eyes confirmed what she already knew. Each close call bound them tighter. When they hid in a cave, pressed close together as soldiers passed above, she felt his steady breath beside her. When he lifted her once more to climb over sharp rocks, she clutched his armor without hesitation. When they crossed a river of black water, he kept her safe from its pull, never letting her slip. But the weight of her doubts did not leave. Why risk everything for her? Why choose to protect a woman who had once carried a banner against him? That night, in the cave, Saria finally asked again, her voice quiet but insistent. "You have every reason to hate me, human, so why do you fight for me?" The soldier paused in his work, his blade halfway through sharpening. For a moment he said nothing, as she thought he would remain silent as always. But then, in a low voice, he spoke, "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind." Her breath caught, her heart tightening. There was pain in his words, pain she understood too well. But before she could ask more, the sound of boots and voices echoed outside the cave. The soldier acted quickly, killing the fire with one swift motion. He pressed a finger to her lips, signaling silence. Together they crouched in the shadows, listening. Voices grew louder, harsh, cruel. Her people's voices, soldiers of her empire. "We must find her. Her death erases the shame. No one must know she was abandoned." Saria's blood turned cold. They were not searching to rescue her, not searching to save her. They wanted to finish the betrayal, to end her life before the secret reached anyone else. The soldier's eyes met hers in the dark, steady and sharp. He had heard it too, understood it, and without words, he promised what she already knew. He would not let them touch her. The soldiers passed, their voices fading into the distance. The cave grew silent again, but the silence was heavy. Saria's heart shook with anger, grief, and something else. She had lost everything, but sitting there in the shadows, guarded by her enemy, she realized she had gained something new. Trust, fragile but growing. The soldier sat at the cave's edge, his weapon across his knees. She watched him, her thoughts heavy, her chest tight. Her people wanted her dead. His people wanted him punished. They had nowhere to go but forward together. And though danger followed every step, Saria felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not just hope, but strength, because she was no longer alone. The cave gave them shelter for 2 nights, but the weight of silence pressed harder than the cold stone. Saria could not stop thinking about the words she had overheard. Her own soldiers, her own people, hunting her not to save, but to kill. The truth cut deeper than her wounds. Her empire, her pride, her loyalty, all of it had been a lie. The human soldier sat nearby, sharpening his blade, his eyes fixed on the steel. His silence was steady, but Saria had learned to read him. Every movement he made was deliberate, precise, as though he carried invisible chains that weighed him down. She could no longer keep her questions locked away. "Human," she said softly, her voice shaking, You told me you know what it feels like to be left behind. What did you mean?" He stopped, the blade resting against his knee. For a long moment, the cave was filled only with the crackle of fire. Then he spoke, his tone low, each word heavy. "My unit was betrayed." Saria's breath caught, her heart beating faster. He continued, eyes fixed on the shadows. "We fought beside our people once. An alliance, they said, but when the battle turned, they pulled back, left us surrounded." His jaw tightened, his voice sharper. "My squad. Every man I fought with, they all died, because her empire abandoned us." Saria's chest ached, his pain like a mirror to her own. Her lips trembled, but no words came. She had been raised to believe her empire was honorable, but now she saw the truth clearly. They had betrayed him, and now they had betrayed her too. Still, one question burned in her. "Then why save me, if you lost everything because of my people?" The soldier finally looked at her, his eyes fierce but not cruel. "Because leaving you would make me no different from them," he said. His words struck her like a blade through the heart. Honor, something her empire had lost, lived within this man, this human enemy. Tears stung her eyes, though she tried to hide them. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I was nothing to them. I was supposed to die out there." His expression softened just slightly. "But you didn't," he said firmly, "because I won't let you." Those words echoed in her soul, louder than the storm outside. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a life worth protecting. It shook her, frightened her, but also gave her a strength she had thought lost. That night, she dreamed of her people, faces of commanders, fellow soldiers, all fading into shadows. But in the darkness stood one figure, holding her against the storm. A human, the enemy who had become her only shield. The next day, their journey continued. The land grew harsher, storms of ash sweeping across ruined plains. Saria leaned against him as they walked, her body still weak, but her will stronger. She no longer asked why he saved her, because she already knew his honor bound him, and now her survival was tied to his. At dusk, they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. Lights flickered below, 2 camps, one bearing her empire's banners, the other marked by his people's machines. Both sides were close, both hunting. There was no path forward that did not lead into danger. Saria's hand tightened on his arm. "If they catch us, they will kill us both," she whispered. The soldier scanned the valley, his eyes calm despite the danger. "Then we don't let them," he replied, his tone like stone. In that moment, Saria felt something shift within her. She was no longer just a wounded soldier being carried. She was his ally now, bound not by command but by choice. And for the first time, she thought perhaps there was a life beyond the chains of empire, beyond betrayal. A life where trust was not weakness, but strength. As the night fell around them, Saria knew one truth with certainty. Her empire had abandoned her, but this human had not. And deep within her, she realized something she had never dared before. She did not want to survive alone. She wanted to survive with him. The valley below burned with light, patrols moving like restless predators. On one side, her empire's soldiers set up scanners, their banners still proud, but their mission twisted with betrayal. On the other side, human machines scanned with cold precision, searching for their lost soldier. And in the middle, between 2 enemies, Saria and the human soldier stood alone. They could not go around, they could not go back. Every path led to death, unless they carved a new one. Saria's heart raced as she stared at the enemy camps. Her body was weak, but her spirit was no longer broken. She turned to him, her voice steady but low. "They will not stop until one of us is dead." The soldier adjusted the strap on his rifle, his jaw set like stone. "Then we make them stop," he said simply. His calmness struck her, not arrogance, but certainty. This was not a man waiting for orders, not a pawn of an empire. This was someone who had already decided what his fate would be, and she realized she was part of it. As night deepened, the hunters closed in. Searchlights swept the ridge, voices shouted commands, engines roared. The soldier guided her into the ruins of an old fortress at the valley's edge. It offered no escape, but strong walls to fight from. Inside, he placed her against the stone, handing her a sidearm. She looked at the weapon with hesitation. "You still trust me to fight beside you?" she asked. He gave her a sharp nod, his eyes steady. "If we fall together." The words sent fire through her veins. Her own people had abandoned her, but this enemy gave her a place at his side. For the first time, she felt like a warrior again. The attack came just before dawn. Explosions shook the fortress walls. Blinding lights tore through the dark. Her people stormed the left flank, shouting her name with hatred. His soldiers pushed from the right, weapons blazing. Two armies, united by only one goal: erase the two who defied them. The soldier moved like a storm, his rifle roaring, every shot cutting down those who came too close. Saria fired beside him, her hands trembling, but her aim true. For every enemy that fell, two more rose. The fortress echoed with fire and screams, stone breaking under the assault. "Keep low," he shouted, pulling her down as a blast tore the wall apart. Dust filled the air, choking, blinding. Through it all, his figure never wavered. He fought not for empire, not for glory, but for survival. And for her, her heart pounded, her fear melting into something fierce. For the first time, she no longer cared which banner she once carried. She only cared about the man beside her, the human who refused to let her die. Hours blurred into chaos. Grenades shook the ground, beams sliced through stone. Her body screamed with exhaustion, but she kept firing. Every time her strength faltered, his voice pulled her back. "Stand with me," he told her, and she did. The fortress walls finally crumbled, the enemy swarming closer. Saria's weapon clicked empty, her last shot fired. She fell to her knees, breathless, her vision dim. But before death could reach her, his hand pulled her up, steady and strong. "Not yet," he growled, his blade drawn as he faced the oncoming wave. They fought back to back, human and alien. Steel clashed, blood spilled, but their will burned brighter than the storm around them. For a moment, it felt like the universe itself had paused, watching two enemies defy everything written for them. And then silence. The battlefield stilled, smoke rising, bodies scattered. The soldiers who had hunted them lay broken, their machines silent. Somehow, against all odds, they had survived. Saria leaned against him, her chest heaving, her body weak but her heart stronger than ever. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I should be dead, but I live because of you." He met her gaze, his eyes tired but unyielding. "You live because you chose to fight with me," he said. The words struck her deeper than any blade. She was no longer a forgotten soldier abandoned by her people. She was a survivor, and she was not alone. The battlefield was quiet again, but this time it was not the silence of despair. It was the silence of survival, of victory against impossible odds. Smoke drifted over the broken fortress, and a rising sun painted the sky in red and gold. Saria stood beside the human soldier, her body weak, her armor cracked, but her spirit burning stronger than ever. They had faced two armies, and yet they still lived. It was unthinkable, a story no one would ever believe. But they were proof that survival was possible, even when abandoned by the worlds they once served. Saria looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "You were supposed to be my enemy," she said. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable, but his eyes holding something fierce. "And yet here we are," he replied, her heart twisted with emotions she had no words for. He was the reason she still breathed, the reason she still stood. Her own people had cast her aside. Her commanders had tried to erase her. But this man, this human, had carried her when she could not walk, had fought for her when she was too weak, had believed her life mattered when no one else did. They walked slowly from the ruins, their steps heavy but sure. The valley below was littered with the remains of both armies. For once, no banners flew, no side claimed victory, only silence, broken by the sound of their footsteps. As they climbed the ridge, Surya turned her eyes to the horizon. For the first time since the war began, she did not see chains. She saw possibility. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. He looked out at the endless sky, his jaw firm. "Now we choose our own path." The words struck her deeper than she expected. She had lived her entire life under orders, under duty, under empire. The idea of choosing her own way was terrifying, yet beautiful. She thought of the betrayal, the soldiers who had once stood beside her, the lies she had believed. Then she thought of him, the man who had no reason to help her, but who had saved her again and again. She knew where her path would lead. They walked for hours, the world around them scarred but slowly shifting into quiet plains. No banners, no patrols, only the whisper of the wind. For the first time in days, Surya felt the weight on her chest lighten. Every step away from the battlefield felt like a step toward freedom. As the sun set, painting the sky with fire, Surya finally spoke. "My people will call me traitor. Your people will call you deserter." His answer came without hesitation. "Let them." She turned her face toward him, her eyes shining in the fading light. "You gave me life when I had nothing left," she whispered. "I will not leave your side." For a moment, he said nothing, his expression still strong. But in his silence, she felt his answer clearly. They were bound now, not by empire, not by war, but by choice. Together, they set camp under the open stars. No walls, no armies, only the vast sky above. Surya lay back against the earth, her wounds still healing, but her spirit alive. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I was abandoned to die, but a human soldier saved me." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything she had lived through. She no longer feared the future, because she knew she would face it with him. And in the endless stars above, she felt something new. Not war, not betrayal, but hope. Hope for a life beyond the chains of the past. Hope for a bond stronger than the walls of empire. Hope that, in a galaxy of endless battles, two survivors had found something worth living for.